This is the proper start. Welcome to Breakfast Club for Fundraising Leaders. Whether you're a fundraising director, a manager of a team, whether you're a senior fundraiser, whether you're a chief exec, or whether you're none of those and you just aspire to be, you are very welcome to our quarterly event, Breakfast Club, that we put on to help the fundraising community. And like I say, thank you ever so much to those of you who tweet or post about the session as we get going. Wonderful to see so many of you here before. So I am unusually excited today. I know some of you think I'm a bit tiggerish often when I present anyway, but there's an extra millimeter to my smile today because Katie just let me know, let me think. 9 years ago, our very first one of these in that little room at the Amnesty building in London, which some of you know from my training courses, the first ever one of these, we did a little breakfast club to see if it would work. And I think we had 32 people in a room. And Katie just told me 10 minutes ago that it's a new Breakfast Club Bright Spot record. 1,008 people registered to join this event. So I'm wholly aware, because it's free and because it's in the morning and because we're in fundraising, I know that not everyone will make it. Maybe we get 300, 400, 500 people actually make it to the live thing, but obviously we'll send the recording out to all 1,000 of you. So thank you ever so much for making time for your learning. Thank you for making time to look out, not only in, although I know there's lots of things all of you have to worry about within your charity as well. So thank you for being a learner. If this is your first one, here's what we try to do. Number one, we try and give you examples and ideas to help you as a leader. Maybe technique, but also maybe just give you a lift. So some sense of encouragement because it's hard. But also some techniques you might choose to pass on to your team, your fundraising team in your charity. For best results, like Alan and I have prepared some stuff. We'll do our very best to make it interesting and useful. But ultimately, what matters most is whether or not we help you be more likely to do something a little bit different tomorrow or next week or next month. And, it's execution that matters, isn't it? It's the doing of things. So level one of that is please just keep a notebook, keep somewhere making an idea, writing down an idea or two that you'd like to try. And crucially, build in some reflection time for when you might plan to actually work out, make a decision. What am I going to do? Who am I going to share this idea with? Lovely to see so many of you who already listened to the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. This is one of my favorite things I've been doing for the last 4 years. Again, I'm so grateful to those of you who've been sharing about it, especially on LinkedIn, but also on Twitter or wherever, or even just sort of hearing an episode and taking it and listening, giving it to your colleague in your charity. Massive thank you from me. I work quite hard, honestly, on this content, but if I know that it's reaching more and more people, it gives me ever more impetus to keep plugging away, trying to make the episodes as good as they can be. And those of you who already subscribe, I'm really quite excited about the one we just published last night. So if you've got a trust and foundations fundraiser in your team, this is one they really should listen to. It's with the wonderful Caroline Danks, one of the best in the business, really, at Trusts and Foundations. And we talked for half an hour about the 4 things she's noticed when there's an especially large gift from a foundation, like a multi-year 6-figure. And she's got, worked with charities who've got three of these in the last 2 years. We talk about what the patterns are. So do check out episode 151 of Fundraising Bright Spots with Caroline Danks about Trusts and Foundations fundraising. Lots of other free content we do our best to create. Every time we do a breakfast club, we record it. And first of all, we'll send it out to you guys if you want to share it with your team, but also we put them on YouTube. So this 3 months ago in December, we had a wonderful session from my colleague Ben Swart about storytelling, and the brilliant Esther Kwaku did a really helpful, powerful, different kind of session. It's a very powerful process to help us tune into and make value from our purpose and our sense of meaning. It's really worth just kind of taking some deep breaths and doing that process. So check it out on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. It's the latest one that we posted. Okay, in terms of the recipe for today, In a moment, I'm going to talk about 5 key ideas we've noticed are still working especially well in high value fundraising, corporate and major gifts. And then 9:25, Alan is going to talk about culture, and in particular, certain things that they do at his charity to do with not only high support, but also high ambition, high challenge. And I think there's a really interesting yin and yang there, that some charities do one of those and the others do the other, but kind of trying to make it both those work, I think, are a lot of the reason why Outward Bound Trusts seem to be absolutely flying at the moment. So he's going to share what he's learned so far on that journey. We're going to get you away comfortably by 10 o'clock. So my plan is to finish by 9:55. Okay, so just going to take chat away. Some of you know, a bit of my background. The top line version is I've worked in fundraising for 24 years. The first 5 or so, I was a fundraiser, but for 19 years, my thing has been training and coaching. And my method has primarily been to seek out the few people who tend to be doing better than many, not because they're special, not because they're talented or gifted, but because I've discovered they tend to be focusing a slightly different way or doing a slightly different thing. I study what they do, get the story, and then I see what of that is unique to their personality or their charity, usually very little, and what of it is replicable for most of us. And I take those things back into my courses. And for 19 years, I've been doing these courses, team days, but also for 10 years, I've been doing these in-depth 6-month programs in major gifts and corporate partnerships. Some of you know full well about those because you've done them or you sent your team on them. Out of all that time, my first insight, and I know it's not very insightful, oh my goodness, fundraising is hard. My intention is not to depress you. It was hard then. Obviously, I honestly feel it's even harder now, not least because of the cost of living crisis, the pace of change speeding up, the after effects of the pandemic, everyone distracted by their smartphones nowadays. Like, lots of things make it harder. But glass half full now, truly, after obsessively studying this stuff, who raises more money, and is it possible to help anyone learn those techniques? Here's my more important point to make. Though it is hard, definitely, I would say, there is usually far more we can do to affect our fundraising results, to build relationships even when it seems hard, even to improve culture, for appetite for fundraising within a church. There's far more we can do than most people are aware. This is what I've discovered, because by day 2 or day 3 of my program, people are doing many of these things that before they weren't. So I've got time today to share 5 of the many things I teach especially in our corporate and our major gifts mastery programs. So here we go. Here's the first insight, and it's just compared to what common sense would tell you. A few of your high value donors and a few companies have dramatically greater likelihood of giving generously than the rest, than the other 90%, than the other 80%. And but basically life is more skewed than we think. We have some sense, well, there's some level of equality. Most customers could buy the same number of products from the company. But what wise companies do is they're really clear on the 80-20 rule. They try to endlessly work out who are our top 10 or 20% of customers and how can we add more value to them so that they follow through on that potential and they buy ever more of our product and they enjoy ever more of our product or service. So in the commercial world, my colleague Craig and I have found it's absolutely true in any fundraising market. Major gifts, individual giving, a number of people doing your event, 5 of them are more likely to raise twice as much sponsorship as the other 30, the other 25. The more you tune into that. Now, but you'd have to be proactive about it, not just, if you don't do it, treat them differently, they'll just raise a bit more rather than 2, 3, 4, 5 times more. So if you really want to get confident about this truth, because you know it, but how on earth am I going to persuade my chair or my fundraising colleague? I really recommend the book by Richard Koch. Even just reading the first 2 or 3 chapters, you'll get more certainty that this is true, and therefore the need to be proactive. Or you could just listen to episode 133 of my podcast with Craig, where we explore this truth and how it applies to individual giving, to events, to certain ways. This is really one of the key punchlines from this extraordinary story. I re-released it recently because was so popular. Tony Gaston came on the second ever Major Gifts Mastery program we did, or whatever it was, 9 years ago. And from a standing start, there was one gift of £20,000 for his small charity. He just kept plugging away doing certain things, and across 5 years, income steadily grew. So in 5 years, it was 2 million per year. And in the podcast, we talk about what he thinks made the difference. And there's several things, but honestly, the single most powerful I would suggest we talk about is he got really clear about the 80-20 rule. He knew that at any one time, just 1, 2, 3, or 4 of his donors were dramatically more able and likely to give, 10 times as much than the next 18. And crucially, then, he didn't just feel guilty about it. He gave thinking time and proactivity to what on earth he could do to deepen relationships with those people. Some of you, again, know this strategy because I've been banging on about it ever since we created the Corporate Mastery Program. But if you've not heard it before, a common challenge for corporate fundraisers is they've done their best to involve the charity, because, some people might be connected. They've done their best and they've talked. Could we ask the trustees if they know any companies, or, they talk to some colleagues. Does anyone know any companies that might care, might want a partnership? They've done it, and then they get demoralized because people they want to help. They nod and smile. They say, oh, yeah, we'll think about it. Oh, and then it's tumbleweed. It's really hard to take. Here's my insight. People in your charity and people who care about your charity are way better connected to certain companies, or some of them to some companies, than you are necessarily aware, including in their personal lives. But often it's gone wrong in the past because the nature of that question. Does anyone know any companies that might care or that might want a partnership? On my program, we tell you to get way more specific. Choose 10 or 12 where you've worked out it would be a really good fit, even if the company doesn't know it yet, and then show those 10 logos to your trustees, to your senior team, to your colleagues in events or whatever. And we find, this is what happened to Ali. I was talking to her just yesterday from the wonderful Ashgate Hospice. Ali did this. And again, she wasn't saying, can you get us money? Can you get us a partner? She said, do you know anyone? Could you introduce me? 3 weeks later, after talking to 6, 7, 8 people, Ali had all these intros, these leads, these ideas. And of course, it doesn't get her a partnership, but she's got a way of getting a first chat with a company. All of that becomes possible when you go fewer, bigger, better. It doesn't work if you send them a spreadsheet with 142 company names that have given you £100 at Christmas for the last 6 years. Fewer, bigger, better. Focus is power. Literally 10 days ago, I got an excited message from someone on Corporate Mastery. At the moment, the punchline was, so excited for our small charity. We've got a £20,000 Charity of the Year partnership, but it only happened because I'd shared my Dream 10 with all my colleagues. And it turns out one of them used to work for this car company in the Southeast, this particular town in the Southeast. She used to work there, and she's still got really good friends there. I set her up with some materials, mini case for support, to go to the Good Friends. The Good Friends proposed that they be Charity of the Year. She used the phrase landslide victory. Landslide victory in the Charity of the Year thing, because none of the other charities were much in the running. £20,000, all because of fewer, bigger, better, knowing what you want, knowing who you'd like to have a conversation with. So that is idea one. I know it's obvious, but it's a question of getting more extreme about how you apply the logic, the wisdom of this idea, if at some level it makes sense to you intellectually. Again, apologies. If you're playing, what's that? Something or other bingo. If you're playing nonsense bingo, so I don't swear, with Rob Wood's way of talking about fundraising, you would definitely get a point if I used the word story. You'd get that would be a good one to have on your card, and this other word would also be a good one to have on your card because I always bang on about it because it is a game changer. So you know this idea before, bear with me. I have got a couple of cool stories to share with you about how it's been applied differently. But at the heart of getting major gifts, trusts, corporate fundraising, better momentum, we have to find a way to do what luxury car companies do. The couple of times I've talked to very successful car salespeople, the insight has been they don't obsess and get too attached to whether or not someone buys the car for £60,000. At some level, they know. I mean, they can do their best to answer the questions well and be trustworthy and all that. But at some level, it's just beyond your control. Like someone's going to make their decision, so they let go of that. The thing they focus most of their attention on, the thing that's a game changing for people who come on major gifts and corporate mastery, is to do what the good salespeople do, is to care deeply about test drives. Can we get more test drives with people who might want to drive our car? And if you think about it, it's just suddenly the pressure's off, because if you haven't sold a car by Thursday afternoon, you're okay, as long as you're trying to, doing creative things, brave things, just nice, generous things to see if someone wants to dip their toe in the water. And if that makes sense in the context of someone trying to sell cars, the key thing is we just transfer the logic of that across to major gifts and corporate fundraising. And your colleague, I totally get. They'll say to you, honestly, do you think I've not tried to get a chat with this company? Of course I've tried. I know that it's hard, and there's something about getting super clear that is the single most important thing to give your energy and creativity to, that we put up on the screen on day one of my programs, and then I give you examples. Suddenly, the human brain is way more creative and brave than it thought it was if they know how important this target area is. We teach 4, 5, 6 very practical strategies for how you do it. You don't have to be especially brave every day. You don't have to be I give you examples, and then you can try your version of it. I've not got time to tell you all of them for how you get the cup of coffee, get them to come to your free event, get some quick informal face-to-face chat with them because you visit them. There's various ways of doing it. I really like this one, so this is not the easiest way, but it should be there as one of your 5 strategies for when emailing and LinkedIn and ambassador strategies and these other things are not paying off. Here's one. So this is a brilliant fundraiser, Jade Richards. She was on our last Corporate Partnerships Mastery program. She works for Dogs Trust. On day one, she, with our help, worked out what those 10 companies should be that she would love a partnership with, because it just made sense. One of them, she works for Dogs Trust, is Hush Puppies. And the more she researched it, she just thought it makes such sense because of the key value of happiness in both their brand and joy in the Dogs Trust brand. What to do? Because Hush Puppies don't, as I understand it, have a charity of the year. They weren't laying awake waiting for a good marketing idea or a good cause to support in 2024. What do you think Jade did? The people who've done my course probably know exactly what she might do. Here's what she did. She had a look at everything about their brand and so on and their strategy, and she saw that their logo involved Basset hounds. And then she bought a pair of their shoes, and then she researched of all the dogs that Dogs Trust rehome, if they happen to have any Basset hound puppies at the moment. And she got lucky, because it's quite an unusual breed, she found in Glasgow at their rehoming centre, they did happen to have some Basset hounds, 2 cute dogs. So then she sent the shoes to Glasgow, and she liaised with her very excellent colleague in the rehoming centre, and they basically did a little unboxing photo shoot with these 2 lovely dogs like snuffling around in the shoebox and standing in the shoebox in a cute way and so on. Took the photos, sent those with some other kind of future pacing, other mock-ups of how cool our brands could look together. Sent those in an email to the managing director of the company. Again, she made it really easy so that as soon as he opened the email, he got it. He saw. He didn't have to click stuff. He just saw. It's a thing called future pacing. That's one of the techniques we teach, one of many, whereby if you can not only talk about what we'd like to do, but by what you create, you give them a taste or a smell or a touch or a feel of a world in which they were smart enough to have chosen to work with you. Like, it's one of the most generous things you could do to do the extra work so that they just feel it and they get it. Anyway, guess what? He emailed back that day and he introduced her to his colleague in the marketing team. They had a meeting. They talked all about what we could do together. Then they also set up a visit to the rehoming centre so that the company could get a vibe for what the charity's really about, you know, the heart of the cause. They negotiated the details. Oh my goodness, well done to both parties. This summer, this July, there's a partnership worth at least 23,000, although I think it'll end up being worth quite a lot more than that, on the back to school range of Hush Puppies. Wonderful, well done Hush Puppies, and wonderful, well done Jade, for all that creativity and hard work to help them see how wonderful it could be. Future pacing is one way you can get a coffee or a test drive. Another one that's live in the moment, if you want to test this, it's in the shops right now. Rebecca is on the current Corporate Partnerships Mastery Program. By the way, I just have to acknowledge, I don't know if there's anyone, it was going too fast. I couldn't see if there's anyone from AR UK on this call at the moment. But yeah, I'm seeing some people raise their hands, but like, hats off to all the amazing things AR UK are doing at the moment. I mean, I think as someone who's the son of both my parents, dementia is a big issue in our lives, and it is for my mum right now. Thank goodness for the hardworking organisation just to keep plugging away, doing great fundraising so that research gets done. And as a fundraiser, they're doing some unbelievably brilliant and sophisticated things, especially in corporate funding, or including in corporate fundraising. It's not a coincidence they're, I'm not going to tell you the number, but the amount they've raised in corporate fundraising this year is astonishing. But when you start looking at their techniques and how they're really on it, maximizing every technique, it makes sense to me. Here's one example. Rebecca, on the program at the moment, she just spoke to me about last week. She shared this example. Last year, she was researching one of the themes that's important at AR UK is to do with nostalgia and the link to memory and the importance of good memories. So she said, what are some companies out there for whom nostalgia is an important message or part of their brand? And she came up with her colleagues, several. One of them was Cadbury. It just makes sense. Again, I don't think Cadbury were laying awake at night waiting for her call, and I've got no idea whether they do or don't have a charity of the year. Maybe they do, but you know, you're probably aware of all the risks that happen when we sort of jump through those hoops. What did Rebecca do? It's really, in a way, same playbook as Jade, future pacing. What she did was she wanted to help them get the look and feel of how cool a partnership between your brand and our brand on your chocolate bars could be, with our logo and its effectively its meaning, its story, with your brand, and kind of amping up that nostalgia memories vibe. She actually went to the trouble. I get she maybe has more resources than some of the smaller charities on this call, but you know, still take the idea. Hats off to the idea. She mocked up a chocolate bar. This is what she sent. That's not a real chocolate bar. They created a mocked up chocolate bar with a retro Cadbury's packaging on it and the AR UK logo on it. She sent that through. Quite an interesting long story that got their attention, got the test drive, then it went quiet a bit, but anyway, got the attention by mocking it up. In the shops now, They are celebrating their 200-year anniversary, Cadbury's are, and there are actually 8 different retro bars, you know, from different packaging through the ages, and all of them have got AR UK's logo on the back, and it's £200,000, thank goodness, to help with this wonderful research that AR UK do. So well done, Cadbury. Well done, Rebecca and colleagues. I appreciate not all of you, you know, necessarily have the resources to mock up chocolate bars, but what could you mock up? Could you mock up what the partnership could look like in a photo with Canva or whatever, and send that as an add-on to the proposal you fill in, the application you send in? You know, Kate from a hospitals charity, just a month ago, she sent me photos of how she did that for Reading buses, and partnership worth £120,000 because she brought to life how good their logos would look together on the bus. Idea 3. This is a brilliant fundraiser called Mark Mina. I think the charity is called Women and Children First. Forgive me if I got the name a bit wrong. Quite a small charity. There are lots of ways of getting that first conversation when you really think about it, and one of them is LinkedIn. This won't work every time, but one of the techniques we shared, and he made it work, was to type into LinkedIn the name of the person, for instance, the CSR person or the marketing director at the company or the trust or the Rotary Club, into LinkedIn, and then it shows you people you know who are linked into that person, even if you don't know that person. Mark did this. He turned out he had three connections that knew that person. Again, crucially, he didn't ask them to contact their mate for money or a partnership. He just said, "Would you introduce me? I think we can, you know, I'd love a conversation, see what we've got in common." There are many ways I think most fundraisers could get a bit more advanced and savvy about how they use LinkedIn. Truly, I'm not an expert. I think after years of looking at this, the best in the business I've found is the brilliant Michelle Benson. She specializes in it. And she's a good teacher. So if all you do is just listen to episode 150 of my podcast, again, already thanks for all the feedback about how it's helped lots of people already, but she will help most high value fundraisers understand the way LinkedIn works way better than you're currently using. Here's a potted version. Most funders in the homelessness space, or, you know, in the education space or whatever it is, they tend to be better connected with each other than you realize. Like, they're in a kind of a bubble. They know each other. Of course they do. They're trying to make the world a better place in that space. Second insight. Therefore, if you have a conversation with one of them, other funders like that or other companies like that are likely to see that conversation without you having to work at it. And third insight, most people on LinkedIn are really passive. It's there, but they don't interact at all. So listen to the podcast. But here's a couple of things that really struck me. LinkedIn will encourage you to connect with other corporate fundraisers like you, or other, you know, major gift fundraisers, or other communications people in charities like you, because then it's easier for them to sell you advertising space. Michelle's insight is, don't do that. I mean, do, but proactively also find ways to connect with the funder you're after, the type of company you're after, because the more you do that, the more other people like them will see your interactions, and it might be thousands of them, and it will offer you other connections like that, because it'll realize that's the kind of party you want to be in. The more you do that, like, you attract them to want to contact you for a coffee rather than you chase. And secondly, basically she lowered the bar for me. I always thought, oh, I haven't got time. She said, Rob, hardly anyone does anything. If all you do is 10-ish minutes a day in the morning, just like some posts, like some comments, you're in the top 5% on the algorithm of LinkedIn users, ahead of 95. If you just make some nice comments, sensible comments, don't have to be brilliant, just say, hey, well done you, congratulations. You're in the top 3% of users. And heaven forbid you actually post something, you're in the top 1% of LinkedIn users. If you start doing that after 2, 3, 4 weeks, the algorithm is really starting to like you, and put you higher and higher up in the eye line of those funders that you're trying to build relationships with. But, I've rushed that. Please check out Michelle's work, or at least start with my podcast on it. Fourth idea. I know it's obvious. I know all marketers say, oh, it's easier to grow with your existing customers than find new ones. Everyone knows that is true intellectually. But honestly, truly, one of the best sources of growth for people on our programs is they improve relationships with people who are already giving. And that's where some of the growth comes from. There's various reasons why it just is easier. Brilliant fundraiser. Shout out to Gemma from Eleanor and her colleagues. And thanks for the post on LinkedIn yesterday. Gemma is on Major Gift Mastery at the moment. Corporate Mastery. In February, she and her colleague, I think Leah, they were looking to thanks about 13, 14, 15 companies that had just been sending in their money for the year. And she was saying, how can I make them feel especially appreciated? And she realized, oh, shall I send them some chocolate? And then she realized that her colleague in the catering team in February had created, as a commercial product, these lovely Valentine's brownie cupcake boxes, beautiful things. Gemma and a colleague, they bought some of these. And again, did they send them? No, because they know that test drives, coffees, informal chats is the game. They were super busy, but they still found time. They made time to go and hand deliver these lovely things. It was so, the feedback they got was just powerful. But also, Gemma said, I'm so glad we did that, even though we were busy, because every single one of those 15 conversations, the conversation was powerful. There was a story. In many cases, we learned something. On 2 occasions, these companies that had been raising money for the hospice, someone well known, like the managing director's mum, was in the hospice at the time, and Gemma hadn't known about it. Another one, they got this insight about the company had just been taken over, I think. So offered to send the 30,000 in quick. So it again, she used this wow moment in order to get these conversations. Oh my goodness, let alone how appreciated those lovely people in those companies felt because of going the extra mile. Emily is a wonderful fundraiser from a hospice called Helen and Douglas House, and she was on our last Major Gifts Mastery program. I really like this one. I bet many charities on this call sent some wonderful Christmas cards last December. I bet you did. And maybe 1 or 2 of them, they were okay. It was good enough. We've been busy. Here's what Emily decided to do, because she just wanted to elevate it and create some wow. She realized that every December, there's a visit by some cute animals to their children's hospice. Last December, a year ago, it happened to be penguins. So they already had photos, but no one, anyway, she created this wonderful penguin-y Christmas card. And then she also created for her top 8 or 10 donors these little wooden Christmas tree decorations and sent those to the highest value donors. What lovely feedback from both. And a couple of weeks later, oh, how interesting. One of those high value donors sent in a gift with a value of £58,000. Will we ever know that it would have happened without? You can never know, but how interesting. Go the extra mile, create wow, results flow as well. I've got to just about 4 or 5 more minutes. Last couple of things. Janine from Acorns Hospice, 2021, she came on Major Gifts Mastery. Before that, the pre-story was they'd received a 3-year gift worth £45,000. In 2021, funds were still super tight, as was the challenges for families. Janine sought a new gift from the same trust, the same funder, but the website said, oh, really sorry, we're not accepting more at the moment. What to do? Here's what Janine did. She went to her colleague Rachel, who's an ambassador for the charity, because her son makes use of the services, and asked her to make it's really short 2-minute film. And the gist of what it said was, Hi, my name's Rachel. Thank you so much to you, named funder. Oh my goodness, the last 2 years of the pandemic have been hard for everyone, but especially for my family with this situation and this illness. I don't know what we'd have done without Acorns, and by the extension, by your generosity. If you can find it in any way to see if there's anything more you can do in 2021 and 22, that would be amazing. I get that times are hard, but if you can, that'd be wonderful. Punchline is, oh, it turns out, they were accepting applications after all. Massive gift over 2 years. Am I saying be disobedient to trust and foundations? No, I'm saying be savvy, but I'm also saying it's amazing how often, if you go the extra mile or do things a little differently and add value, sometimes you end up getting different results from the signal that was initially sent. Last idea, well, some of you, previous sessions we've done on this club about special thanking events, thankathons. There's even a podcast on it with Alice, episode 103. Right, last story. What happened was, here's Naomi. She's on our current Major Gifts Mastery program. About 5 weeks ago, in day 3, I think it was, here's what she shared with the team. She was on the plane over to actually come to the program, and she was sat on the plane, and she started chatting to the person next to her. And they were just talking about work, and he said, "Oh, where do you work?" And she said, "Oh, I work for a charity." "Which one?" "Fields of Life." "Oh, hang on a minute. I support them. I donated to them in like in the autumn. In fact, come to think of it, didn't you call?" And in that moment, they both paused, because they both got this insight that they'd spoken before. She had called him up in November to make this lovely thank you call, not to ask, just to thank him for. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you this is what he said next was, I just have to tell you this thing. That day you called, I was having a mare of a day, crazy busy in London. I missed the first call, and then the number came up again a bit later, and I was in a coffee shop, and I thought, well, it might be important. I'll answer it. Anyway, there were you, not asking for anything, just telling me what a difference it had made and giving me an example. And I have to tell you, honestly, it turned a bad day good. It made my day. No charity has ever just called up to say thank you, and with no strings attached, just to make me feel good and give me feedback. Ever. Why am I telling you this? Because I know the little voice that appears in my head, and probably your head, and probably your team's heads, that persuades you out of doing that brave, generous thing of calling up to say thank you. I get it. But if you feel that, please remember what Naomi fed back to us. Okay, sometimes some people are busy and they can't take the call. Also, GDPR, respect that. But lots of phone numbers you hold, and lots of calls are not being made. And it makes such a difference to the donor. Makes them feel great, which obviously is good, and B, has wonderful implications for future fundraising. So those are 5 ideas I've shared. Fewer, bigger, better. Focus is power. Coffees, test drives, primary focus. Lots of stuff you can do on LinkedIn. Existing relationships, go the extra mile. And when you do it, focus on what you're giving, not trying to get, like Naomi did. If you're intrigued by some of that, just listen to 2 or 3 of these episodes on the podcast to get more of the same, and in more depth, and frankly, less of a rush, forgive me. Just before I hand over to Alan, it's one thing for me to do 25 minutes. It's another to go calmly and slowly and help you implement. Honestly, the biggest power of these corporate mastery and major gifts mastery programs isn't even the content. It's being part of a group that's all plugging away, finding ways to implement, and then feedback to each other that it's working. You don't need willpower to G yourself up, because you're just pulled along by a sense that it's worth the effort, that it works. So very briefly, it's a 6-month program, masterclasses with me, coaching with one of my colleagues across 6 months, not every day, it's manageable, lots of time to do the work. The most advanced level with lots of coaching is platinum at 3,000 something or other. The one most people do for 6 months is 2,395. If you are able to get in touch, because you've heard all about it, and finally you're just going to, let's see if we can make it happen, get in touch in the next, whatever it is, 8-9 days. It will be cheaper by £400. So let us know in the next day or two. It comes down to 1995. I know that lots of charities just don't have that kind of budget. I get it. But if you could, or you might, or you could borrow some budget from this year and some from after April or whatever. If you just want to pay after the 5th of April, fill in the form in the chat. My colleague Katie will hopefully put that in the chat soon if you'd just like to chat it through. Like after 10 years of doing it, it's not that I'm especially clever. It's literally I've seen the patterns and I've got the stories that help you believe the patterns. And 6 months in the environment, it just works. So all I can say is, if for whatever reason you're not delighted with how effective it is, by the end of day one, let me know. You get all your money back, and I'm so sure that won't happen. Is I'll write a check for £500 to your charity as well as the money back. All the risk is on me. You've got nothing to lose. I mean, that's never happened, but that's my point. Once you get it, you see that it's going to generate way more than what you invest to come on the program. So, find out more. I know that's not for everybody, but I need to let you know in case it could just make the difference in 2024 to you or your fundraiser. So I'm going to take these slides away, and in a moment, I'm going to bring up Alan's slides. Deep breath, change of pace. Okay, I hope you can now see Alan's slides. So deep breath, pause. Different kind of content, but oh my goodness, so important. It's one thing to get one of your fundraisers or your team doing good technique. Really, I think the holy grail of fundraising, and certainly of leadership, is if you can create a culture where it is the norm that whether you're in the office or you're not, people are acting a certain way, having high standards, doing more of certain behaviors. Culture remains one of the most important things of all, I think, to give our attention to. So whenever I hear of someone who's got a really strong understanding of it and certainly is really interested in it and tries different things, and by the way, it appears to be working really well, I really try and have a conversation with them. And Alan is one such person. Really top line, my understanding of the results is across the last 5 or so years, fundraising income, sustainable fundraising income, has grown threefold. I might have the detail a tiny bit wrong, but broadly, that's my understanding. So whether or not all of Outward Bound's Trust's culture and behaviors suit you is one thing. Treat it as food for thought. Like, I don't think Alan or I are saying translate everything he does, they do, and plonk it in. Like, that would be crazy. But Alan has a really interesting story to tell about how he and his colleagues do think about culture, in terms of both high support and high ambition, high challenge. So that's plenty. And over to you, Alan. Thank you. So we're going to do a quick chat, or about sort of TED Talk length, and we're planning to have time for 2 or 3 questions at the end. So if while Alan's talking, you've got a question, please put it in the chat and start it with the word question in capitals, and Katie or I will find those and we'll answer as many as we can. Over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Rob. Hopefully everyone can hear me and see me. That's great. Well, first of all, congratulations, Rob. We actually haven't met ever, which I find amazing considering we've been on the scene for such a long time. But it's been amazing to listen to this, and amazing to see how many people are so engaged and inspired by all the work you do. So congratulations to you. A bit about me, and then we'll get on to a bit of culture. I mean, I kind of grew up working in the Jewish community, and I was there for about 10 years. And of course, they're very, very good at the high value campaign element of fundraising. I joined out about 13 years ago, and it is an amazing adventure. It's the most inspiring organisation. We have amazing locations in Cumbria, the Lake District, Welsh Mountains, Scottish Highlands, and I could take you every single week of the year, bar Christmas, to any of our centres, and you will see them packed with young people who come from all over the country to really challenge themselves through, and discover new worlds in the lakes and mountains of those amazing locations. It's an inspiring cause, and it's something I'm incredibly inspired to work for. what you'll have to forgive me is, because of a technical thing, Rob has to be the guy who does the slide. So I'm going to have to say, next slide, Rob. Great. So when we talk about culture, and look, when I talk about culture, we do some things right. I've done some things wrong. But ultimately, I kind of always come up with the question, who are you? What's your identity as a fundraising team? And you'll have to forgive me because I am a kind of interested in military history. I'm interested in football. So there are analogies throughout this presentation that kind of relate to that. And I know my team give me a hard time about it, but that's the kind of way that I see things. This is Sun Tzu. And if you've ever watched Wall Street, the original film Wall Street, there is a great bit where Gordon Gekko talks about Sun Tzu, and he gives this quote about your enemy. If your enemy is superior, evade him. If angry, irritate him. If equally matched, fight. And if not, reevaluate. How does that relate to us? The charity sectors, we've seen from this call, there are thousands of fundraisers out there trying to win as much business, to try and steward as many donors as possible. We're all trying to do the same thing. So ultimately, it's a very competitive market. So you've got to kind of have an identity. Who are you? What do you stand for? And the thing that I evaluated at Outward Bound is that with a relatively small team, we can't go toe-to-toe with some of the bigger charities and some of their spend and some of their campaigns in their marketing. So we had to focus in where we were strong. And if you go on to the next slide, Rob, our superior flank, as we like to say, is really in high value gifts, be they from corporates, high value individuals, trusts and foundations, our event strategy, our legacy strategy. All of this is trying to set a culture, which is trying to focus every single fundraiser on what they are here to do. And one of my kind of brutal kind of sayings is, we don't get out of bed for anything less than £5,000. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we don't accept or don't love people who give us £100 or £500. It's trying to focus the 14 or so people who work in this team on where they're supposed to put their time. So we focus on high value fundraising. One story that I kind of remember is when I first joined, they would organise an event with Westlife, the band. And if you remember Westlife, so they were a big band and they paid them an amount of fee. Anyway, it was all very highly geared, something that made me feel very uncomfortable. Anyway, they had a Battersea Evolution. There was 800 people there. But what I noticed was, out of the 800 people there, when it came to the auction, when you analysed the auction, when you analysed who had bought tables, there was about 20 individuals who had basically made 90% of the value of the income. And so when you get into that, you just go, well, why bother with the other 780? You should focus on the 20. And that for me was a really big learning, is you can try to do lots of things for everyone, but really, and I think Rob alluded to this, you have to focus in on the ones who are going to be the most opportune. If we do the next slide, Rob. And credit here to Helena Sharpstone, who some of you might know, because I've worked with Helena for a long time. And she introduced me to the Insights Wheel, which I'm sure many of you have done. Some of you may have done other things like it. But really, it separates into 4 different sectors. It has colours, red, yellow, green and blue, recognising the kind of person you are and your comfort zones, etc. But really, it is the basis of what we use to try and put in what we call a high challenge, high support culture. Now, some of you may have seen this before, but ultimately we are trying to get to the top right in terms of delivery, to try and get commitment and enthusiasm and achievement amongst all of our team. But obviously, if you see the other sectors, you see some of the challenges. Now, often you will see in the charity sector, of course, in top left, you'll see quite a lot of cuddliness, quite a lot of comfort, a lot of support, high support, but maybe not enough challenge. And of course, if you actually go to the bottom right, in some organizations that I know, where they're very, very competitive and very, very driven, unfortunately, you end up with a whole load of stress because you've got high challenge, but low support. And of course, in the bottom left, which is probably the worst of all, is when no one cares because they haven't got much challenge and they haven't really got support anyway. Next slide. And these are the kind of attributes that we're looking for in high support, high challenge. And one of the big ones that I want to point out there, I don't want to go through them all, is assertive, equal relationships. Great believer in this. I was quite interested when I joined OB that a lot of the fundraisers, when they were talking to donors and talking to donors, they would be so deferential to them. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet me. You're so busy. I'm so grateful. And I hated that right from the off. And what we always tell our fundraisers is to have an equal relationship. Sure, they've got money or they hold the keys to the money, but they are our equals. We're doing amazing work. They should be pleased and proud to work with us. This is an equal partnership, and it's got to start off on that nature. And it goes on also into the team and the way we talk to each other and the way we engage with each other. If we go into the next slide, Rob. Ambition for us has been the cornerstone of what we've done. When we first started, we were at 1.7 million, something like that. And I could tell that there wasn't a lot of confidence, and lack of confidence comes from a lack of ambition. So we really tried to bring ambition into what we did. In 2012, we did a thing that we never thought we'd be able to do 2 years before. And that was the abseil down the Shard, the descent of the Shard, which we did. And that raised £2.8 million in one day. And the key there was, first of all, we got the permission from the Shard to do it, and it just opened. It was very excited. But the key was we actually didn't try and get as many people down it as possible. We tried to get 40 people down it and asked them to try and raise £100,000. Now, not all of them did raise £100,000. Some raised more than £100,000. But actually, by setting the bar so high, it's so ambitious that actually people buy into that ambition. People like something that is reassuringly expensive. And we always kind of use that term. So all of our events and all of our activities are reassuringly expensive. And we try and go for that thing that kind of brings in a high value market. We also are really ambitious about the type of events and talent that we try to bring to our events. We try it, and people always ask, how did you do it? How did you get, top left, Tom Cruise to come to this event? Well, you know what? We asked him. We also asked hundreds of other people to come to that event. Also high talent. Most of them said no. But what people see at the event itself is the person who said yes. So we keep on trying. We won the Christmas charity appeal at the Times. The truth is we're really aggressive about trying to get charity appeals. We're trying to befriend editors. We're trying to befriend key journalists. We actually found that most papers give more junior journalists the opportunity to run the Christmas appeal as part of their development. Finding those people who've been given that opportunity and trying to get that opportunity to have a test drive or to have a coffee with them, that's key to kind of some of our ambition of what we do. We're always chasing those dreams. We also talk about wet and dry fundraising, which is something that people laugh at. But dry fundraising is obviously the causal stuff. We have a great cause and all this kind of stuff. But wet fundraising just recognizes the fact that some people aren't all that interested in what you do and just need to have, but are interested in having fun. And actually, if you can bring some fun to the table, and I'm talking about high net worth individuals in particular here, you actually have a recipe where you can move them from a great event with Gary Barlow or Take That or whatever it may be, or an abseil down a building, and move them to try and take them to dry fundraising, which is more about bringing them to our centres, showing the amazing work that we do. And if we can move them from wet to dry, it's a brilliant way to bring people in. Next slide. Let's talk about traffic lights. When I first arrived, I noticed that on corporate fundraising, and this is quite, I think this is quite common, we all have lists of donors. And if you go through them, you know, often people will use a traffic light system. Oh, you've got green, yes, they're definitely going to give, or they have given. Red, oh, we don't know, or they've said no and they're off the books. But there's also a big thing, which is amber, which is we don't know. And I found that at the first that nearly everyone was in amber. And why are they in amber? The fact is, we just didn't know. We hadn't met them, we haven't spoken to them, we hadn't really got a handle on where they were at with the organisation. Well, that is not helpful. So for me, red is okay, green is great. Amber is actually the big problem that we face when we're looking through donor lists, and we have to try and move as many donors, whatever they may be, trusts and foundations, corporate, from amber to either red or green. And I'll come on to red in the next slide, Rob. This is about making challenge normal. And I kind of, you know, think about that. The first comment is that failure in fundraising is so normal. And why we would think it was any different, I don't know why. It's, you know, we get rejected all the time. And I just think fundraisers need to feel that that is just part of what they do. And they should, and we should just smile and move on to the next thing. So linking self-respect to the level of effort, not to your level of good fortune, is absolutely key. You know, as long as people are really working hard and trying to put their all in, then that's all that really you can ask from a fundraiser. But really making sure that people don't feel that they're failing all the time just for getting no's. If they're getting lots of no's, it means that they are approaching lots of donors, and that we can only say is a good thing. Next slide, Rob. Mother Teresa. So I always kind of say my team will always know that I will tell them the way I feel. Now that has plus sides and it has minus sides, but it also creates a culture where people talk. You know, the whole team, hopefully, will end up talking in that way, where they can find ways to be honest with each other. So to be honest, we're struggling right now in a couple of areas, and that's okay. But one thing that we always do is when we have agendas for team meetings, I don't just put agenda points, you know, figures and finance, or, you know, what's going on with this event or that activity or that campaign. I ask questions. So I will say things like, I'm not sure things are going very well in this area. How does everyone else feel? What may be the reasons for it? Please come with your honest thoughts. And I always say, be honest, because really what I want is people to come to those meetings having thought about the problem, rather than just to update on what's happening in their area, but actually to focus on difficult areas and problem areas and work it through as a team. Next slide, Rob. Bleeding the radiator, people become tense, relationships, that's normal, that people sometimes aren't on the same wavelength. And my former CEO, who was amazing, would always bring the senior management team, and things can get tense in senior management teams, of course they can. And he would bring us together for 2-night residentials, and we would just talk it through. And we would use people like Helena Sharpstone, who've referenced before, but other, you know, use the insights wheels, use the challenge and support model to actually get into some of our difficulties and challenges and try and work them through. And most importantly, to remind each other that we are human. Next slide, Rob. Feedback is absolutely key. After every event, every campaign, every success, every failure, every win, every loss, we have a session where we have feedback, where everyone is given the opportunity to kind of feedback. Ultimately, where does that get you? It gets to a place where you understand what success is, what success really feel like. And so even when you've raised lots of money, sometimes things might not have gone quite as well, or it might not have been as good along the journey as it needed to be. And you need to have that open feedback to try and get to a place where everyone understands what is the marker for success. So success does not equal the pounds at the end. Success is the methodology to get there. Next slide, Rob. Where's it gone wrong? And it's gone wrong a few times. This is Roy Keane, a football manager who is well known, and a former football player who is well known for his forthright views and telling people how it is. The problem with that is sometimes that can just be too much for people. And being too challenging and too difficult can actually just be really, really difficult. I once had, one of my big learnings was I had a manager in an old job who was just on at me. And I remember all day, he'd be sending me emails all day from 5 a.m. right through to midnight. And I remember once on New Year's Day at 9 o'clock, he sent me a pile of emails. And I knew then that that was just not for me anymore. And I think there is a lesson for all leaders not to be like that. And then the final slide, Rob. People need to enjoy it, right? It needs to be fun. And when it stops being fun, we always take time to do what we call heads out, which is trying to meet other organizations, be they businesses, be they other organizations, maybe something completely different, to try and understand what they're doing and get some new inspiration. When the fun stops, stop, as Alan Goldshaw just said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. So much great content in there. We've got a few more minutes before we get people away in 5 minutes time. So maybe there'll be time for a question or two. I can't currently see one in the chat. So if someone's got a burning issue, they'd just like a bit more detail or something about what Alan said, please write it quick and we'll try and squeeze it in. I guess my question, Alan, is not a new theme. Like so much of what seems to be going on here is about honesty. It is, and I guess the challenge for that is it's easy to say when on easy topics, but just the human condition is often to shy away from looking at those things or saying explicitly about those things. I wonder, could you just say a tiny bit more about things you've learned over the years about how you help someone move from amber to tell it like it really is, that for instance it's red, or indeed any tips about helping people be truly honest in that after event review or after project review? I'm guessing people get better at it the longer they are in your team, but have you learned any tips for us who agree, but so far it's been difficult to help our colleagues do it?
Well, I think when people don't tell the truth, it's kind of honest. It's kind of obvious. So I think when someone is kind of struggling with the idea of kind of being challenged, it's trying to probe into that and try to question a bit more on why they are saying what they are saying, and try to understand whether it's actually what they believe or whether it's something that they're just saying because they believe that's what everyone wants to hear. And it's trying to create the culture. The interesting thing about boards of trustees, which I've noticed, and also management, is you just must be really honest all the time to manage expectations. You know, sometimes you have to deliver bad news, but they have to, in the long run, trust you to give the right news and the truth. And so every time that I'm talking to those kind of groups, I'll just be really, really honest, even if it's bad news, because in the long run, I know they need to trust my word, because it's absolutely, that's absolutely key.
Yeah. That makes sense. There's various questions coming in, and I'm really sorry if we're not able to answer yours. I think Denise is asking, out of interest, what difference in income generations were made when you went to a 5K minimum to do that proactive extra work? Was there an immediate effect?
It skyrocketed because immediately the effect was we eliminated all the other stuff that people were doing, which wasn't generating money, but felt good and felt the right thing to do. Right. So talking to, spending lots of time going to meet and talk to people who were never going to give significant amounts more. It is a more brutal way of kind of thinking, but obviously we kind of want to do good things. We want to represent our organizations, but you do have to be kind of a bit brutal about how you're using your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of this probably is it's a skill, it's a muscle to build. And if the leader's got really clear and is doing their best to get better at it, then you encourage everyone to practice this and get better over time, which is certainly easier if that's the culture you're building and that everyone's in it together. And forgive me, I know there's lots of questions there, but I did promise I would get everyone away comfortably in advance of the 10 a.m. meeting. I think, Alan, if people want to get in touch, is LinkedIn the best way if anyone wants to follow up with you?
If anyone wants to get in touch with me, LinkedIn, connect with me, direct message me, I will get back to you.
Fabulous. And also, I note that the wonderful Helena Sharpstone is also in the club today. Hi, Helena. And obviously, she and her colleague are really good at this stuff. So by all means, reach out to Sharpstone and Skinner. We've got a wonderful website if you want to start a conversation about some of these themes that Alan's been talking about. Highly recommended. So I need to get you away. Crucially, unless you've got a 10 o'clock, I really recommend you just find 5 or 10 minutes just to write your notes from this. Otherwise, it'll sort of waft away or fade in power. So please do that, or if not now, sometime this morning, jot down what are you going to do, who are you going to talk to, what are you going to share. We're going to send out a recording of this later this week, or Friday or Monday. And I'll send out in about an hour, I'll send some follow-up resources from my session. Like I said, if you like this approach, then you don't have to once every quarter come here. If you just subscribe to Fundraising Bright Spots, there's so much content we've created over the years with people like Alan and Emily and all the other kinds of stories I've shared. There's all those stories to just listen to at leisure while you're commuting. If you would like to somehow find a budget this year or next year to get onto our programs, or even just a team day, very powerful if my colleague Ben or Linda, if we come and do a day on this stuff with your team. So do check out the form we sent or our website /services. We just about managed it. Okay, it's 4 minutes to. Thank you so much to everybody for making time. You could have been doing the stuff, but you put it aside to just try and step out and learn and find a new idea. And it sounds easy, but lots of people don't do that. So you're winning. I salute you for making time to keep learning in whatever way you can. Massive thank you to Alan for all the time you've put into preparing an excellent talk. I mean, it's so hard when you've only got 18 minutes to get that much good content in. So thank you for all the prep that required, and your wisdom and your honesty and your examples. I really appreciate it. I definitely am going to be thinking more about red, amber, green myself. So thank you. Thanks, guys. We'll do another one of these in June. If and when you're able to post on LinkedIn about Breakfast Club or podcasts we do or whatever and share it, I'm always ever so grateful if we can just reach more people with this content we work so hard on. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Good luck with your fundraising and your leadership. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Katie. Goodbye.
Thank you.